السلام عليكم. بعد البيت الواحد would like to give my condolences to the families of all those who've been massacred in during the past few months in Sudan. Their photos are here and more, in case you don't know who these people are. And I don't think any of us felt this year, but we certainly hope that next Eid in Sudan will be a more blessed one with a free Sudan in the way we want it, inshallah. Can you all hear me, by the way? No.
أنا محتاج
Okay, sorry. Many of us in the past few months were probably staying home and thinking about what is the way out? What do we need to do here? How do we resolve this issue? How do we conceptualize what is happening in Sudan? And in many ways, this is why we're here today. But if you really think about the prescriptions and what needs to be done, and we often neglect to think about the root causes of where we got our knowledge from, or what we really want to do, and who really benefits from all of this. Building on what Nisreen was saying here, I want to talk about something very external to what we think about in Sudan. There is a tendency in our education, in knowledge, in schools here in the West, to really look and think about African issues as internal. These are internal issues by internal groups, tribes, religious groups fighting, killing each other. These poor people need our help. And this tendency, this logic of internality, enjoys an ontological stability that is not challenged. And we need to really conceptualize this carefully and think about the ontology and epistemology of who benefits from it. This is a very Eurocentric approach to understanding third world problems in general, Africa specifically, and today we're going to talk about Sudan, and hopefully during the discussion we're going to understand how and what is the role of outsiders has been doing in Sudan and what is doing in Sudan today. But most of the terms that we hear about what we want, such as democratization, democracy, freedom, human rights, these terms hide more than what they reveal. They're loaded. And most of the time we understand it in a very minimalist approach, minimalist way. We understand that democracy, for example, in a procedural way. But we neglect to think about democracy as a substantive way that embodies the historical role of the state in developing its nation and economically, politically, and socially, and taking up the social responsibility of elevating people. But that kind of state has to have and has to enjoy a high degree of sovereignty, which most countries in the third world, in Africa generally, do not enjoy. Why do they not enjoy this? It's because of the high level of dependency that these countries are going through. This dependency is part of a global hegemonic system that really forces us to think in a particular way about our interests, about what we need and what we don't need, and how we go about it. Even peace itself, I keep thinking about how we chant in Sudan all the time, Hurriya, Salama, Adala, freedom, peace, and justice, without thinking about what does peace really mean? You would tend to assume and think that peace has one definition and one meaning, when in fact it has more than one. And it has a very problematic assumption that peace means the absence of war. And that's a minimalist approach as well. It has to be more than that. It has to deal with the root causes of the conflict. And these root causes of the conflict, they have to address both the internal and the external factors that caused the conflict in the first place. And if you look at Sudan's history since independence, you will find that, actually since before independence, in colonialism, you will find that the role of external factors in all the problems that we have in Sudan are visible and strong. And unless we address that, as we are addressing our internal causes, we're going to continue to have a lot of problems in Sudan. So addressing half of the problem is not going to get it done. Addressing the internal and the external is important. How do we do that? How do we go about addressing this? We need to be aware of the importance of what we're asking for and be careful about it. Because, in fact, my research has revealed that many of these people in Sudan and other parts of the world, and my research, by the way, is informed by critical theory, and looks more at the role of external powers and hegemony in third world countries. And my most recent research was looking at how these countries are always being assumed as saviors of third world problems. These people in the West here are the saviors. And the problems in Sudan and in Africa are the local issues that we have nothing to do with in the West. We're not part of that. We're not part of the root causes of it. We're only part of the solution. So this kind of notion, this kind of understanding legitimizes intervention, legitimizes Western intervention in third world countries, and allows it to clothe itself in a humanitarian way. It looks more and appears more as the good people coming to save Sudan. In fact, humanitarianism and intervention, if anything, proved in the last 50 years as a failure. No countries really benefited from foreign intervention, Western intervention, no matter how we put it, on where they went. So we need to be careful about what we hope to see Sudan, what we hope to see happening in Sudan, and who, most importantly, is supposed to help us. The reason why I'm saying this is because now there is a mediation taking place by the African Union and Abiy Ahmed in Ethiopia, trying to negotiate what is happening between the freedom of the change and the freedom and change forces in Sudan and the military transitional government, the transitional military council. Now, if you think of the issue as internal only, you would think that these two guys are just being stubborn because A, the army or the military council is interested in power, or B, the change of freedom forces are interested in changing into civilian rule, and you would think that these dynamics are purely internal, when in fact there is a regional power or regional powers that are insisting on a specific outcome for these negotiations. And I'm specifically talking about the role of the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt here. Now, what kind of outcome would they want to have, and why? Who would that outcome benefit? Who benefits from it? Are they really keen about the Sudanese people and those who passed away that we have our photos here? No. It's the geopolitical interest that Nisreen just showed us here eloquently. So we need to understand and realize that the roles of external powers, whether they are behind the scenes contributing to problems or visibly trying to come and negotiate and mediate, are problematic. Both are problematic. After all, it wasn't the African Union or Abiy Ahmed or the US that ousted Bashir. It was those who died. These are the ones who kicked him out. So I'm trying to bring to your attention the need to really reconceptualize what we have, the way out, and try to instill in your head the importance of thinking internally. I'm not saying that we do not have a role here, outsiders, or those who live in the diaspora living outside abroad. No, that's not what I'm trying to get at, because we can and we should contribute somehow. But those who hold power are those who sat in the heat of Sudan, 50 Celsius, for I don't know how long, 4 months, under bullets, under oppression. These are the ones who have the power. And I think it's very important to recognize that and to give them credit for that. And they also hold. They also have the keys of the way out, because they are a new generation that has not been tainted, and I repeat, tainted, by the ideological problems that we grew up with in Sudan, of Ittihadi, Ummah, Shuyu'i, cause, all these things. They were born in an era where there was no democracy, no political parties, so they have different ideas. We need to allow them that space. We need to allow them the time and the energy and the power to really express their abilities and to give them the confidence they need so that they can grow. Now, what would Saudi Arabia and Emirates want from Sudan, apart from this picture that Nisreen just put for us here? It's not just about economic, but it's to a larger extent what was happening in the Horn of Africa in the past 10 to 20 years. The Horn of Africa has been, historically, a place where foreign powers always clashed. Italians, English, the British, the French, you name it. But most recently, Saudi Arabia and Emirates decided to intervene in that region because they felt encircled by Iran. So they have been encircled. What do I mean by that? In the north, Iran has managed to get a strong foothold in Iraq, in Syria, and Lebanon, Hezbollah, in South Lebanon. In the Horn of Africa, Iran had managed to really infiltrate the Eritreans, and they really used even the Eritrean port of Massawa to train Assad to train the Houthis rebels, and they used their communications with Sudan itself at the time to really expand their influence in the region. That threatened Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. That gives them the impression that they are being encircled and they need to do something about that. But what really pushed them over the edge is the fact that the Obama administration has decided that they don't want to have much to do with the Middle East anymore. They are more interested in confronting China in the Far East. So when they shifted their geopolitical interests and challenges the foreign policy to China, this is when Saudi Arabia and Emirates took upon themselves to really do something instead of the historical reliance on the US to do things for them. And they prepared for intervention. 2005, Ahmadinejad won the election and started to expand Iran's influence, as I mentioned, in Eritrea, Sudan, and elsewhere. 2010, they expanded it more into Syria and Iraq. 2015, they signed a deal with the Obama administration, and March 2015, immediately after that, Saudis and Emiratis invaded Yemen. Now, you cannot invade a country without, they realize that they cannot invade Yemen without having more troops, ground troops, without having ports, airfields, and support. What they did is that they tried to get, most importantly, the support of all these countries in the Horn of Africa to be with them, to be aligned with them. And they bought, and they started, as you probably know, that the Emiratis, Dubai Ports, the company Dubai Ports has managed to buy many different ports in the Horn of Africa, and one even joked that it's one port, one road, one port, similar to the Chinese. One road, what was it, the Chinese belt. Now, what is really happening is that the Emiratis and the Saudis now are infiltrating and intervening in the Horn of Africa through their interest into cutting off Houthi supplies, Iranian supplies coming to Al-Houthi from Bab al-Mandab. By the way, Bab al-Mandab Strait is only 30 kilometers from Eritrea and Djibouti. Only 30 kilometers. And Aden, the port of Aden, is closer to Mogadishu and Hargeisa than Riyadh. So don't think what is happening in the Horn of Africa does not influence Sudan or what influence what takes place in Sudan at the moment. So even if we see, I'm afraid, a so-called civilian government coming into power, we need to go back and ask ourselves, who are these people? Who are they representing? Because what we heard recently and what we've seen is that many of them were invited to United Arab Emirates for talks. Many of those in the oppositions. So we need to really understand who is being truly true to the Sudanese people, the interests of the Sudanese people, and the interest to those who died, versus those who are going to hold themselves accountable to foreign powers and to foreign leaders, as opposed to the interests of the Sudanese people. We need to break the cycle of dependency. We need to stand up tall and realize that we have a lot of work to do internally and externally, and we need to think outside the box and be more creative about how we think, how we conceptualize. And it is these young faces that I see here in the crowd that needs to really think about that. One thing that I want to end with is that we often tend to think that the responsibility for change lies in the hands of those governments. We need a good government. We need a transitional government, a civilian government. How about yourself? What is your role and my role in this?
Yes.
What is our role into changing not just the Sudan, but the way we think and conceptualize Sudan? If you really want to have a better Sudan, and you really want to get engaged as an activist, you need to start with yourself first. We need to start changing ourselves first before we can change Sudan. That's how we change Sudan. Not waiting for others to come in and do it for us, but reconceptualizing what we think about Sudan itself, race, ethnicity, all the diseases that have plagued the country and been used by external powers to really separate us and destroy us. We need to end that. We give others, external forces and superpowers, an opportunity to intervene when we actually do not have the ability to unite ourselves by ourselves. It's very important to think about that. It's very important to think about us, who we are and what we can and cannot do. And then take it from there.